My mother-in-law stood up at my sister-in-law's bridal shower in front of 14 women, including my own mother, and said, "Honestly, the only reason this family has anything nice is because of my son. Fiona just rides along. My husband was not in that room." But my mother was. And I watched her face go still the way it does when she's deciding whether to say something or let it go. She let it go. I didn't say anything either. I smiled. I picked up my mimosa. I asked if anyone wanted more of the quiche I'd spent 3 hours making that morning. But I want to back up, because if I just tell you that part, you'll think my mother-in-law is simply a rude woman who says thoughtless things at parties. That's not the full picture. The full picture took me 6 years to see clearly, and even then I needed a spreadsheet and a very honest conversation with my accountant to fully understand what had been happening. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he is, whatever else he may be, grew up in a family where money was always tight and always discussed in hushed, anxious tones. His dad worked in manufacturing and got laid off twice before my husband was in high school. His mother cleaned houses. They scraped. I understand that. I genuinely do. I didn't grow up wealthy either. My parents were school teachers in a mid-sized town in Ohio. We had enough, but enough meant one family vacation a year and hand-me-down winter coats. The difference is that I watched my parents handle scarcity with dignity. They didn't ask anyone for anything. They figured it out. When I met my husband at 24, I was 2 years into a job at a healthcare software company. Nothing glamorous, but I was good at it, and I got promoted faster than I expected. By 27, I was making more than I ever thought I would at that age. By 30, I was a senior project manager making just under 6 figures. And I had started a small consulting side business that was bringing in another $25,000 a year on top of that. My husband worked in restaurant management. He made decent money, not great. We split everything 50-50 in the beginning, which felt fair. We each covered our own student loans, paid equal shares of rent, took turns buying groceries. Then we got married, and then, slowly, things shifted. It started small. His mother's car broke down 8 months after the wedding. It was going to cost more than the car was worth to fix it, so they needed to replace it. My father-in-law had already taken out a small loan he was struggling to pay back. My mother-in-law asked if we could help with a down payment on something used and reliable. My husband looked at me with those eyes he has. I said yes. $4,000. I told myself it was a one-time thing. 6 months later, his younger brother, the one getting married, the golden one, the one his mother talked about the way people talk about a favorite book they've read 20 times. His younger brother lost his apartment lease because his roommate bailed. He needed first, last, and security deposits somewhere new. Could we help bridge the gap just for a month? $3,000. He paid back $500 of it. I want to be precise here because I kept records. Over the course of 6 years, I personally contributed from my salary, from my savings, from my consulting income, $81,000 to my husband's family. That number sat in a spreadsheet I had labeled Household Misc because I couldn't bring myself to name it what it actually was. My husband contributed too, I should say, but his contributions went through his family's hands differently. His mother managed it. She decided what it paid for, and the money I gave seemed to just disappear into the general need of it all. My in-laws eventually moved out of their rented townhouse and into a small house. We co-signed the mortgage. I want you to understand what that means. If they ever stopped making payments, that would land on us, on me, on my credit score, on my financial future. My name was on that mortgage. My sister-in-law's engagement party, which I planned and paid for, $600. The honeymoon flights I booked for my brother-in-law and his fiancée as a wedding gift because my mother-in-law mentioned in passing that it would mean so much, $2,200. My father-in-law's medical bills from a procedure that his insurance didn't fully cover, I wrote that check directly. $3,500. None of this was asked for dramatically. None of it came with a big confrontation or an ultimatum. It was always just the water rising, slowly, and by the time I noticed I was treading, It seemed too late and too mean to say anything. And through all of it, my mother-in-law spoke about me the way you speak about an appliance that works well enough but isn't particularly impressive. I was never warm enough. I was never around enough. I didn't come to things. I worked too much. I was too focused on my career. I wasn't nurturing the way a wife should be. I didn't cook the right things. I kept the house too minimal, cold, she called it once, which is funny because I was the one paying the mortgage on her house. She said these things to my husband. He would relay them to me, gently, framed as, just so you know what she's thinking. He never pushed back on her. Not once. In 6 years, I cannot recall a single instance of my husband telling his mother that she was wrong about me. I told myself that was just how families worked sometimes, that it wasn't his job to manage his mother, that I was being too sensitive. The bridal shower comment was not the thing that broke me. I want to be clear about that. I had absorbed worse in quieter rooms. What broke me happened 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, when I stopped by my in-laws' house to drop off some paperwork related to the mortgage. There was a refinancing situation we were navigating, and my mother-in-law was on the phone in the kitchen. She didn't hear me come in. She was talking to someone, a friend, I think, and she said, "Oh, the house is wonderful." Yes, it's all because of my son. He takes such good care of us. That's just how I raised him. I stood in the entryway holding a manila envelope. My son. Not our kids. Not my son and his wife. Not even a vague gesture toward the person whose consulting income had subsidized their lives for half a decade. My son. I set the envelope on the little table by the door and I walked back to my car and I sat there for a while. I wasn't crying. I was doing something quieter than crying. I was finally, fully understanding something I had been refusing to understand for years. I drove home. My husband wasn't there. He was at his parents' place, actually, helping his dad with something in the garage. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and I opened that spreadsheet. $81,000. And my name on a mortgage for a house I had never spent the night in. I called my accountant the next morning. I told her I needed to understand exactly what my legal and financial exposure was, and what it would take to untangle myself from things I shouldn't have entangled myself in. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She's known me for years. She just said, "Okay, let's look at everything." I also called a real estate attorney because of the mortgage situation. That one was more complicated. I didn't tell my husband I was making these calls. Not yet. What I did over the next 3 weeks was quiet and deliberate. I moved my consulting income into an account that was mine alone. I began the process of exploring what it would take to remove my name from the mortgage. This turned out to be nearly impossible without refinancing entirely, which required their cooperation. I documented everything, every transfer, every check, every Venmo. I had records going back to the first year of our marriage. When I finally sat down with my husband, I didn't do it in anger. I want you to know that, because I think people expect these conversations to be screaming matches. This wasn't. I was calm. I had the spreadsheet open on the table between us. I said, "I need you to look at this with me." He looked. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I didn't realize it was this much." And I believed him. That almost made it worse, because the problem wasn't that he knew and didn't care. The problem was that he had never looked. He had let me handle it, let me say yes, let me write the checks, let me absorb his mother's contempt with a smile, and he had never once sat down and looked at what it was actually costing. I said, "I need things to change, significantly." He asked what that meant. I told him I would no longer be contributing financially to his family in any form. No loans, no gifts, no covering gaps. If he wanted to give them money from his own income, that was between him and his paycheck. But my money was done. I would also need him to address the mortgage situation. I needed my name off of it, whatever that required. And I was giving him 6 months to make that happen. And then I said the part that I had been working up to for 6 years. I said, "I also need you to talk to your mother. Not to scold her, not to make her feel bad, but I need you to tell her that what she said at the bridal shower was not acceptable, and I need you to mean it." He was quiet again. He said, "You know how she is." I looked at him across the table and I said, "Yes, I do. And I've known for 6 years and I've said nothing and done nothing and kept writing checks. That's on me too. But I'm done with that version of this marriage. So the question is whether you want to be in the new version with me." He didn't answer that night. I gave him space. I wasn't going anywhere immediately. We had a house together, a life, and I wasn't going to blow it up in a single conversation. But I also stopped doing things. I stopped sending money. I stopped volunteering my time for family events. I stopped RSVPing yes to things I didn't want to attend. My mother-in-law noticed within 2 weeks. She called my husband asking why I hadn't responded about Easter. He told her he'd talk to me. He talked to me. I said I had a work conflict. This was not entirely untrue. Easter came and went. I was not there. Then came a Sunday in April that I will probably remember for a long time. My mother-in-law called me directly. She almost never called me directly. I was not really a person she spoke to. I was a person she spoke about, so the fact that she called me was already unusual. She started pleasantly enough, asked how I was, made small talk for about 90 seconds. Then she got to it. She said that she felt like there had been some distance lately and she wanted to address it. She said she hoped I wasn't upset about anything. She said, and this is the part I want you to hear, "I know sometimes I say things that come out wrong, but you have to understand, I just love my son so much and I want what's best for this family. I want what's best for this family." I had written checks totaling $81,000 for this family. I took a breath. I kept my voice even. I said, "I appreciate you calling. I do want to be honest with you. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about what I've contributed to this family over the years, financially and otherwise, and I've realized that I've given a lot without much acknowledgement. That's something I'm working on for myself. Going forward, I won't be able to help out financially the way I have been. I hope you understand." Silence. "Then, what does that mean exactly?" I said, "It means the financial support stops. Going forward, what comes from our household will come from my husband's portion of our finances. I won't be contributing beyond that." More silence. Then her voice changed. It got tighter. She said that she didn't realize I had been keeping score. She said that family wasn't supposed to be transactional. She said that she had always treated me like a daughter. I didn't argue with any of it. I just said, "I understand. I hope we can still have a good relationship, but this is the decision I've made." She said, "I think you need to talk to your husband about this." I said, "I already have." She hung up. Within the hour, my husband got a call. I know, because I could hear the tone of it from the other room. Not the words, just the tone. That particular frequency of maternal disappointment that carries through walls. He came to find me afterward. He looked tired. He said, "She's upset." I said, "I know." He said, "She says you were cold to her." I looked at him. He had the grace to look away first. There was a very hard month after that. His brother called once, not to yell but to ask if everything was okay, in a way that meant he was checking on the money situation. I told him everything was fine, personally, and that I wished him and his new wife all the best, which was true. My father-in-law didn't call at all. He was never really the one who called. My husband and I had 3 or 4 more conversations that were difficult. He wasn't cruel about any of it. He was, I think, genuinely caught between things he didn't know how to hold at the same time. His love for his family, his love for me, his discomfort with conflict, his slowly dawning awareness that he had let something go on far too long without looking at it. In one of those conversations, he finally said, "I should have said something to her about what she said at the shower." I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm sorry I didn't." I believe that too. We're still married. I want to say that because I think people sometimes tell these stories like they end definitively one way or the other, and the truth is that most of them don't. We're working on it. He did speak to his mother eventually. I wasn't there for the conversation, but he told me what he said, and it was enough. Not perfect, but enough. The mortgage situation is still being sorted. It's a slow process. But there's movement. I've been to 2 family events this year. My mother-in-law was polite to me. Not warm. I don't think warm is something that's coming, but polite. She thanked me for the dish I brought to Thanksgiving. That was new. My consulting business grew this year significantly. I took on 3 new clients in the spring. I bought myself a very good winter coat, the first one I'd bought without looking at the price tag in longer than I want to admit. What I want to tell you, what I think the last 6 years have been slowly trying to teach me is that generosity without a voice is not generosity. It's just erosion. I gave because I cared. I gave because I wanted to be accepted. I gave because it was easier than having the conversation about why I felt like I wasn't seen. And none of that giving bought me the thing I actually wanted, which wasn't gratitude or credit, but just acknowledgement. That I was there, that I counted. No check ever bought me that. What got me a little closer to it was the conversation at the kitchen table with the spreadsheet open and my hands steady. It was saying out loud, I see what has been happening, and I am not going to keep pretending I don't. My mother-in-law told 14 women, including my own mother, that I was just along for the ride. I want her to know. I want everyone in that room to know that the ride was on my gas, and I'm the one who decided when it was time to stop. There's a version of this story where I feel sorry for myself. I've told that version in my head more times than I can count. Usually late at night, usually when I was tired and couldn't figure out why I kept feeling like I was disappearing inside my own life. But sitting here now, I don't think self-pity is the right lens for any of it. What I think, looking back, is that every consequence in this story followed directly from a choice. That's not a comfortable thing to admit, because some of those choices were mine. I chose to say yes the first time. I chose to say yes the second time. I kept a spreadsheet but never showed it to anyone. I smiled at bridal showers while something in me kept a quiet, careful tally. That's not victimhood. That's a pattern I participated in. And understanding that is the only thing that gave me any real power to change it. My mother-in-law didn't take anything from me that I didn't hand over. That's the hardest sentence I've had to sit with. She said careless, dismissive things about me because I never gave her a reason to believe there would be a cost. And my husband stayed quiet for the same reason, because I had shown him year after year that I would absorb it and keep going. When I finally stopped absorbing it, both of them had to recalibrate. That's cause and effect. That's just how it works. What I wish I had understood sooner, what I'd tell anyone in a situation like mine, is that doing the right thing quietly, without ever naming it, doesn't protect you. It just makes you invisible. I thought generosity spoke for itself. It doesn't. Generosity without honesty is just a slow erosion of the person doing the giving. There's something I've come to believe about the kind of strength it actually takes to do what I did. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't yell. I didn't send a long email. I sat at my kitchen table with a spreadsheet and said out loud what I had been refusing to say for 6 years. That took more out of me than any of the checks I ever wrote. Because writing a check is easy when you're trying to avoid a harder conversation. Being honest, sitting in that discomfort, staying calm, saying this is what I see and this is what's going to change. That's the thing that costs something real. I also think about what it means to actually see yourself clearly. Not harshly, not generously. Clearly, I had to look at my own role in all of it. I enabled the dynamic. I let my desire to be accepted override my judgment over and over again. Seeing that wasn't fun. But it was the beginning of something better. You can't fix what you won't look at. The ride was on my gas. I meant that when I said it, and deciding when to stop, that was mine too. I don't know what the next years look like exactly. My marriage is a work in progress. My mother-in-law is polite now, in the way that people are polite when they've lost leverage. That's not warmth, but it's something. I've stopped needing it to be more than it is. What I have instead is a consulting business that drew 30% this year, a savings account that is entirely my own, and the knowledge that I can sit across a table from a hard situation and not flinch. That's enough. Actually, that's more than enough.